Welcome to the SBCA podcast, Component Connection, where we explore the people, ideas, trends, and innovations shaping the market and the future of structural building components. Whether you're on the shop floor, in the office, in the yard, or out in the field, we're glad you're here.
Hello, I'm Molly Butz, Managing Director for SBCA, and I'll be your host for this episode of Component Connection Lumber Insights. I'm joined today by Justin Binning and Ken Timmins. Justin and Ken are lumber traders from American International Forest Products, or AIFP. Welcome to the podcast, gentlemen.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks, Molly.
Guys, hi. Holy cow, I feel like it's been a hot minute since we've talked. I hope all's been going well.
Yes. Yeah. No complaints outside of the normal ones.
Yeah. Well,
That's good, I guess.
Fun seeing everybody at the BCMC.
Yes.
Awesome to connect with
Great show.
old customers, new customers, and then folks in the industry that we don't necessarily get to interact with every day. So that was fun.
Yeah, it was good to see everybody.
Shout out to Omaha. Great town. Never been to Omaha and was pleasantly surprised.
Good. I've always loved Omaha. I think there's a lot of character in that town. I think about it as like a big little city. You know, there's lots of opportunities, but you're not so sprawling. So yeah, good times for sure. Awesome. Well, all right. So as discussed, it's been a few weeks since our last lumber podcast, and I figured we'd just kick it off with a recap. But I was looking back at my notes, and I'd written down that maybe we thought a bottom was forming, and then I wrote possibly, and then, I kind of drew a line in the sand. Like, is there a line in the sand here? So I don't know. Let's just talk about it. Where'd we end up?
Yeah, no, it's crazy how to your point, starting this out, how time, it's been almost 2 months since we've done this. Who knew that watching paint dry, time could move so fast? I thought it was the other way around, but anyways, here we are. We have had some movement in the market, and what I was kind of feeling back in early September came to fruition. Just, I wouldn't say it was as sharp as like the line in the sand and that's it, and like created some sort of movement in the market. But I think what happened is really just some people needing to buy some wood. I think that when we look back earlier in the year with the tariffs and kind of the uncertainty and the just kind of shock and awe that was going on with tariffs and people not knowing how to react, and are these things going to be put in place, and what is it going to do to the market? And we're all thinking about supply and how supply was going to be affected. And I feel like there was not less on demand, but we felt pretty good. Like we felt like we knew where demand was, but demand continued to wane. And I think there was purchasing based on some speculative purchasing going on early in the year leading up into spring. And so I think there was a good bolstering of inventories throughout both secondaries and our end users. And there wasn't, created this lag in the market when we didn't really get the follow through, and maybe some jobs fell off and things didn't feel as strong as they maybe did in the beginning of the year when we were a little bit more optimistic. And so we felt this big just lull in the market, and that led us all the way up into basically September. But the line in the sand wasn't necessarily drawn, but it led up to a point in the market where the producers really started to scale back quietly, I guess is the best way to put it. No major announcements. We did have one major announcement that I'll touch on here in just a minute, but quietly kind of production started to leave the marketplace. And then, you started to feel a better balance of supply and demand. The consumer, those out buying the lumber products, the way the purchasing was being done didn't change, right? It's still very hand to mouth. I'm going to buy it when I need it, and I can get the tally I want at the price I want at the shipment I want. And it was kind of the unlimited buffet of have it your way, or Kenny would, getting in a BK, right? Have it your way. And that's what the market had been. This September, again, with that kind of balancing act that started to happen, it enabled the producer to stop the bleeding, per se. And prices are rising a bit, but they're not running away. They were flat for a couple of weeks. 2x12 kind of led the charge early on, and 6-inch followed. Still some confusion in spots in the market in terms of pricing. But overall, from where we left off in September, for almost, it was 60 days, which is crazy. We're on much firmer footing going into towards the end of the year. And obviously we got holidays coming up too, right? We've got a couple major ones there. And so there's not a lot of time left on the clock, really. November and December, you got a couple holiday weeks there too. So I feel like we just did this podcast. I feel like we were just saying the same thing. So I do feel like what we've seen over the last, call it, 5-6 weeks, I think is pretty much what we're going to see to finish out this year. We're going to see a relatively stable market. I think we'll see that the trade happen on both sides of print in terms of pricing. And if you're out there with your ears to the market and you're staying in touch with it daily, there's going to be some deals that pop up and then they're going to vanish. And you're going to wonder, well, where did that go? I thought the price was this. And it's like, well, that was a today deal and that deal's gone. And it's, that price didn't represent the market, that represented the opportunity, but the market's actually here. So anyways, I'm rambling here and I apologize. One curtailment notice, it was on the 17th of October, Interfor announced a curtailment between both their northern sawmills, i.e. the Canadian mills and the U.S. South, of a total of 250 million board feet. That was stated to be divided evenly between both their Canadian and U.S. South mills. So there's that. That one was obviously something that was, again, press released. I think, again, going back to my early comments, a lot of the quote unquote curtailments are happening quietly with shifts being taken off and out. That's helping us create a more stable market right now. So, yeah.
Super strong recap. I definitely can't say it as eloquently as Justin just put it. It's so funny how thinking about 60 days ago when we recorded where we were and the difference between producing regions right now. Canada's going through their own set of wins and challenges. The U.S. South is trending in its own direction. Out west, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Northern California-based producers are doing their own thing. It almost reminds me of being in like a New York City or Chicago or, these cities where it's like you have Chinatown's on one street, then one block over you have Little Italy, and then one block over from there it's Korea. It's like right next to each other. You have such polar opposite scenarios all operating within the same cityscape. It's very interesting. In fir species, Doug fir, hem fir, white fir, both green and dry Doug fir, there's really not one blanket phrase I could use to describe everything. Very two-tiered market, like Justin's saying, lots of hand-to-mouth needs. Order files for a lot of component manufacturers have been brought in closer. 2 to 4 weeks is not unheard of. I think if you're a component manufacturer with 4 weeks or longer order file, especially this time of the year, that's fortunate, certainly. Haven't seen the mountain states shut off quite yet. California, I do anticipate, will get a little bit quieter here. We're dealing with the atmospheric river is the big news out here in the West. Okay. We've been getting absolutely dumped on with rain. The forecast for the next 10 days is rain nonstop. Little patches of blue sky here and there, but rain every day. It's an interesting scenario. When we spoke early September, amongst the different directions things were going, we really were kind of in an atmosphere where we were buying some of the cheapest wood we'd seen all year. In certain cases, some of the cheapest wood I bought in my career took place back then. The problem is liquidity. As manufacturers and lumberyards and builders order files came in, there wasn't a lot of people excited to take advantage of those giant discounts, which is very interesting. Very, very two-tiered market took place. There's a price for what somebody needed to buy, and there was a price for what somebody needed to sell. Could be the same product. Spread might be $100. And I think a lot of focus amongst everybody, it doesn't even matter if you're a trader or a mill or a buying representative from a company, a designer, or you just the receptionist who answers the phone. Everybody was kind of interested in what was going to happen next, right? All the talks of tariffs and policy and, that sort of environment has really kept people's decision-making closer to the vest. And overall, 2025 has been a year of kind of waiting and hoping things shake out the way you want. And then as soon as it feels like something's shaken out, here we are with the next round of okay, what did we just hear? This and that. Right before we stepped into the conference room to record this podcast, we had a trader say that he thinks we're going to shut down trade with Canada entirely. And most of the floor roasted the guy for it being an outrageous clause. But you really never know. I mean, we all have our opinions on what we think is possible and not possible.
Yeah, but the fact that you can even make that statement with some relative, that it could be potentially true.
Exactly. Nobody knows. It's a crazy clause to say.
We've been talking about that a year ago.
No, not at all. And so, it's just that it has people playing each hand individually. So with that, a lot of the conversations with people is forecasting for the future because everybody wants to know what's going to happen. And as a professional trader like Justin or I, the major part of our job is really helping our customers, partners, clients navigate the turbulence of what's going on in international commodity trading. And I think the companies I've seen stuff their pockets with the most profit over the last 60 days are the companies that try to keep their head down and do it one day at a time. And the companies that have been stunned with paralysis by analysis are the ones who keep their scope 90 days and greater, right? We're all in the same environment, right? And, everyone wants to ride the wave as best you can. But I think really kind of controlling what you can and ignoring what you can't is the best play here, right? And really, if I was going to boil it down to one thing, is keep selling it, right? I don't think there's anything that right now makes me think lumber products, doesn't matter what species, grade, cut, whatever. I don't see a reason for things to get abnormally higher priced in the next 90 days. The one thing that could force prices higher are further production curtailments. Justin mentioned a few of them that we've had. Interfor also has some mills out in the Northwest that have been indefinitely curtailed. That is having an impact on the market, I think mostly in web stock products. Lots of stud production has been curtailed. As far as cord stock products, high-grade MSRs, one and better, select struck, that kind of stuff, there have been spot discounts, but in order to secure the discounts, you have to buy significant volume. You can't get it on a one truck here, one truck there. Cars aren't even really getting it done. You have to really pony up and buy a significant, weeks worth of production out of a sawmill to see a significant discount out of those guys, which we have seen and probably a few weeks ago, and there has been stability since then. Now, I think customers are excited to see that prices have gently lowered in the last 2-3 weeks. Everybody's always excited to lower their average cost. But with that, I think there's the conundrum of, okay, putting myself in the shoes of a lumberyard or component manufacturing plant or pallet plant, doesn't matter. All right, we lowered our average cost. There's almost the internal struggle of, okay, does that mean we immediately need to lower our sales price to keep capturing market share? And I think everybody's fighting that battle. And it seems like even though prices are absorbently cheap right now, you still can't buy it cheap enough, is what's wild. I mean, some of these, I've mentioned that I bought some of the cheapest wood in my career recently. Some of it has sold, some of it is still sitting on the shelf. Liquidity is not robust by any means, right? And good deals are good deals, but it's not like anything's the churn, the spin. It's not a category 5 rapid by any means. We're plugging along, we're moving it every day. And I do think, even though on the trading floor, some days might seem quiet and kind of like you're trudging through the trade, by the end of the day, when we look at the reports, we actually are moving a very impressive amount of wood every day in hindsight. When you're in the trench, it feels a little different than when you're, back at the base camp looking at what you got done for the day.
Well, it's like, it's liquidity is actually pretty good considering all things. But to your point, right, it's like you buy the best deal you ever bought in your career and you're like, did I buy 2 extra? And like, why aren't they selling?
Right.
Right. And it makes you scratch your head. But then you look up and you're like, oh, we sold 140 loads today.
Right.
Or whatever. But why do I have these?
Very sporadic. Yeah. It's not like all products are hot at the same time. It almost seems like one feed group per day per week lights up. Right. Like today, the day we're recording, which is August 28th, my team, the fur team, we're having a tremendous sales day. Some of the best trading that we've done in a long time. But, yesterday was one of the quietest days we've had. It's not like there was any news article or headline or anything that provoked that. Yeah. Just kind of happens to be sometimes.
Well, it's kind of like the same on the other side of like to the buyer, like keep your, ears out, dialed into the market because you don't know where the deal's in. So we're no different. We're on our side of the trade, like was scratching my head all day. Busy as can be, nothing to show for it, like getting things done and like managing stuff. But then today, a lot of orders, and it's like, well, and where do they come from? Right. Like,
Right.
But you're there, you show up, some good things can happen. But it's to your point earlier, Ken, it's like putting your head down and going to work, right?
100%.
Like showing up right now is half the battle.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say, again, it doesn't matter if you're a trader or a producer or a component manufacturer. It's very much like lunch bail mentality. Show up, go down the salt mine, you'll come back with some salt. So, and I do think over the next 90 days, well, let's call it 60 days, November, December, I do think things continue to drift lower as a general statement, unless we see production news. This is a La Nina winter, wetter, colder winter, which we're definitely seeing in the Northwest without a doubt. I think weather's going to really hinder demand in a lot of spots. But, with that, production's kind of the nemesis on the other side of that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like there's so many volatility factors, and it feels like there should be bigger sways and moves within all the volatility, but there isn't, right? And there is. I shouldn't say that. There is some, but it feels like it should be bigger.
And you guys have been I feel like we've had this conversation. I'm having a little deja vu because we've had that trudging through the mines conversation for the last couple of podcasts. But what you always say on the back end of that is exactly what you said, which is there's still a lot of trade happening, right?
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. And, some like what you were just talking about, JB, also, we've had those conversations before. And I feel like, so it's interesting that while we're sort of expecting a lot more peaks and valleys, there seems to have been more of an equilibrium in the trade than there has been in years. And so that's interesting that, we joked a lot during the COVID years about whatever the new normal was going to be, but it almost feels like we are there. And also, I want to clarify for our listeners, it is October 28th, not August, which is what?
Did I say August? I'm
You
so
did.
sorry.
That's okay. I just want to make sure everyone knows.
The worst part is I looked directly at the date on the laptop as I said that too. Classic.
Yep. All good. I could edit, but it's more fun to just correct it. So we'll go. All right. So I'm hearing equilibrium. I'm hearing what you guys are saying. One of the things I do like to ask is, and based on what you're saying, I think the answer is no. Are you finding that there's anything particularly hard to find? Because it sounds like the fiber basket is fairly full as well.
I think for the most part, everything is still, relatively available. I think there's some spots with some MSR in the wides, a little bit of tightening there, some tightening out of specific zones. I'm going to highlight the central zone. We had a larger producer go down for the entire month of October out of the central zone. And like you're feeling that, and you're feeling some of that pressure of products that would come out of that particular zone. But for the most part, everything's still relatively available. And if it's not ready for prompt, it typically is for 1 to 2 weeks. So we haven't had any of those, like, I think it was a couple of years ago. Remember, MSR was so tight and like
super
couldn't
scarce.
find it and wides, and was like, good luck. Felt like 8 months went by. And if you needed 2x12, 2400, or 2x8, 2400, you're not going to get it.
No.
Like, we haven't had any of those moments. I don't see anything on the horizon leading me to think that that's going to happen. The wides are always kind of a who knows when this time of year comes around. So it's something I'm always cognizant of. And at today's values, in terms of overall lumber pricing, you can't really, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of the price. And if you had to have it, or you think you're going to need it in the next 60 to 90 days, I would say you're better off probably buying it today than maybe having to worry about it in 30 days from now, because we have seen some pretty drastic things that can happen this time of year, especially with the wides, 100%. So
Doug fir is definitely tougher than hem fir and white fir for my desk. Hem fir is getting a little sloppy, white fir's chasing it. Doug fir's a little bit more resilient, predominantly in the web stock grades, especially if you're a guy who needs a number 2 stamped web stock. That's getting pretty tight in the shorter lengths, 3s, 4s, 5s, very tough. As far as cord stock grades, it's wild. I think availability from a lot of mills And anytime somebody's reaching out for a quote or an inquiry or anything, it gets covered quite a few times, and it really becomes a battle of margin compression for everybody, which I think is what everybody in the industry is feeling. There is business out there, but it's really a matter of, how skinny can you make it on your end to win the business? I feel a lot of bidding going on, and it almost feels like each market, doesn't matter which market you pick, has kind of one winner getting the lion's share of the business, while others are bidding and bidding and bidding and bidding. And I think it really comes down to what companies have decided that they are going to win as much business as they can, regardless of the level of margin compression. And that's kind of where a lot of the business has flown through. I think every market has a clear champion, maybe a couple in some larger markets, but overall, I think that happens quite a bit lately.
All right. Well, you've both given a little bit of advice as we wrap up here, but I just thought I want to give you guys the opportunity to give any additional thoughts or feelings about, we've talked about where we've been. We talked about kind of where you see things headed in the next, say, 90 days, especially as we head through the holidays into the new year. But any other things that you might want to throw out there as advice for our component manufacturers as they navigate these last, really only a couple of months of the year?
Yeah. I think we got 10 weeks left. And I would say, I kind of touched on it earlier, right? I still think you can get what you want. I still think you can get the tally that you want. I still think you'll be very happy with pricing. If you've been in tune with the market, the market hasn't ran away from you. And most folks have, your average cost for the year probably hasn't changed a whole lot than what we can replace it today. The spread isn't huge. But what I would say is, don't get caught in the fact that you think you can, get it here and, prompt, right? Sure. So some of these items, again, like I mentioned, you might not be able to get it right away. You may need to wait a little bit. So make sure you're keeping an eye on your inventory and ordering things in a timely fashion to make sure that your business operates as it should.
I'd say if you're a component manufacturer in today's climate, diversify. Right, if you're solely reliant on single-family home building, check out commercial or agricultural. If you only support one builder in particular, I'd maybe reach out to a couple more. If you think you only, supply the states neighboring your location, I would see if maybe there's a possibility to logistically tap into a new market just outside of the traditional net that you're throwing. We see it all the time on the trading floor. Products are substituting in places we would not guess all over the place. And I think the same could be said with the finished trusses as the raw material. Show it to more people, right? I think you'll get a little frustrated if the same, song and dance doesn't work necessarily, but somebody else might like that song and dance too. So I would just say cast a little bit bigger net and keep exploring other segments of the market.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. And I think with that, we will wrap up our episode for this week. Justin, Ken, thank you for your continued expertise and enthusiasm. And thank you all out there listening to SBCA's podcast, Component Connection. If you've enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please like and share it with others. And stay up to date and in the know by subscribing to Component Connection on whatever podcast platform you use most. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks for listening to Component Connection, brought to you by SBCA. If there's a topic you'd like us to explore in a future episode, email us at podcast@sbcacomponents.com. Until next time, stay connected.